You want a screenshot of my desktop at 10 a.m. and another at 6 p.m.? Okay then, posted by 8DAQENS3355WMPFJ. A long time ago, I worked on the service desk for a relatively large, but not gigantic, company in the UK. There were several service desk teams spread across the country with their own policies and practices and such. Mine was pretty chill. The attire was smart casual. The relationship we had with users was friendly. We had a team leader who would really look out for us. I think I was really lucky, given what some of the other service desk teams had to deal with: suits and ties, users interrupting you when you're on the phone, team leaders who would just vanish for half a week with no warning. While working there, I was living in a rural area, a hamlet that was about a mile from the nearest bus stop, 9 miles from the nearest train station, and 2 miles from the nearest shop. And my commute was about an hour through the countryside. It was a nice drive, but it was also unpredictable. Flooding on the roads wasn't uncommon, with detours around the affected areas taking 20 minutes. You'd occasionally get snow up in the hills when it's sunny everywhere else, and if you were unlucky enough to find a herd of cattle being moved down the road, that could add 10 minutes to your commute. The unpredictability of my commute was something that I had raised in my interview. I wanted assurances before I had even been offered a position that my commute situation would be taken into consideration. As such, I made an arrangement with my team leader and with the arrangement of the rest of the team. I would work the late shift from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and as there would usually be 2 to 3 people in by that point, so the desk would still be covered if I was late. If I were late, I would make up the time another day or after hours. During my probation, I was asked to log when I arrived and when I left, but once I had passed, my team leader trusted me not to take the crap. However, note that this informal arrangement was actually against company policy, and it hadn't been signed off by HR. Not that our local HR team would have minded, but the head office probably would have complained. Unfortunately, my team leader ended up leaving the company, frustrated at being passed over for promotion one too many times. Once he left, I ended up reporting directly to the service desk manager. The service desk manager would come down to visit the office once a month. Once he took over the team, he started coming down once a week, and it turned out that, on his second and third visits, I arrived late for work. Not that late, I should add, maybe 5 minutes on one day, 7 minutes on the other. However, nothing was said, just my apologies and my teammates saying, "That's okay." On the third week, however, a meeting was scheduled at 8:30 a.m. for 9 a.m. I was invited to the meeting despite not starting until 10 a.m. When the meeting started and they realized I wasn't due to work for another hour, they rescheduled the meeting to start at 10 a.m. And on that particular day, I encountered snow in the hills on the way to work. On a section of my commute where I would normally be bombing it at 60, 70, 80 miles per hour, visibility was down to around 20 to 25 meters, and my speed had dropped to sub 30 miles per hour. At one point, I had to stop due to a car turning right across the traffic, so I grabbed my phone, took a photo of the snow, and sent it to my team to tell them that I'd be late. I finally turned up to the office about 20 minutes late, at which point I saw I'd missed several calls-in teams asking me to join the meeting. It turns out the meeting was still ongoing, so I joined it. As soon as I got in, my new boss stopped whoever it was that was talking and began to berate me in front of everyone else for my tardiness. "This meeting was supposed to start at 9 a.m., but we postponed it because you didn't start until 10 a.m. It's now 20 minutes past, and you're only just shown up." "I'm sorry, boss. I wasn't aware that the meeting had been scheduled. I would have left earlier if I knew." "So you plan to be late. Is that what you're saying?" No, that's not what I meant. My commute is unpredictable, and sometimes it takes longer." "Then you leave earlier. Nobody else had issues with their commute this morning." "I encountered unforecasted snow on my commute this morning. I didn't expect to be delayed." Really? Snow in April?" "Yes, I took a photo and sent it to my team about 40 minutes ago so they know I was running late." "But you didn't send it to me." "I sent it to the team on Teams. You should have received it." "You should have emailed it to me." "I don't have my work email on my phone." "Then install it on your phone." "I don't think you have the authority to tell me what I should install on my personal phone." There was a moment of silence, and I could see a few of the faces on Teams react with shock to my comment. My boss said we would talk after the meeting was over and said that I had missed so much of the meeting that there's no point of me remaining there, so I should get to work. I dropped off the call, looked at my team, and then asked if anyone wanted a coffee before heading to the machine with 2 mugs. I returned with 3 and got to work, checking with my colleagues if they minded me grouping out of the phones while I waited for our boss to call me back. They said sure, so I spent the time working through tickets and making changes that wouldn't require me to make any calls or remote into users' desktops. At about 10:50 a.m., the call from my boss came, on my personal phone. "Austin, I would like you to go somewhere private." Boss, this is my personal phone. I think you should call me on my work phone or Teams." "I'm calling you on your personal phone so you can go somewhere private. If you want this conversation to happen in private, I can call you from a conference phone in one of the meeting rooms." "No, that isn't necessary. It's fine. I'll call you back." I hung up and grabbed a stock laptop that I'd been building the previous day and a USB stick, taking them into one of the meeting rooms I'd seen was vacant. When I sat down, I called my boss from the conference phone while logging into the laptop with my details. I should probably add now that my boss had called me from a mobile number rather than a landline. All calls from company landlines were recorded, but calls between mobiles were not. By calling him from the conference phone in the meeting room, I could be sure that the call would be recorded. "Hi boss, it's Austin. This really wasn't necessary. Your phone was perfectly fine. I'm sorry, I don't keep a charger in the office as my last cable got stolen. The battery doesn't last that long anymore and I didn't want to run it out before the end of the day." "Fine, whatever. We need to have a talk to address your recent tardiness." As I said on the call earlier, my commute can be quite unpredictable. "That's still no excuse. You knew what your commute was like when you took the job. You should have anticipated that you might need to leave early." "Yes, and I addressed this in my interview, and I said that I wanted assurances that I'd be allowed some flexibility in my start time in case my commute took longer than anticipated." "That's not in line with company policy. You start at 10 a.m., so you should arrive by 10 a.m. I made an agreement with my previous team leader that if I arrived late, I could make up the time another day." "But you didn't make that agreement with me, and how do you think your colleagues think with you arriving late all the time?" "It's once or twice a week at most, and for every day that I arrive late, I arrive early on another day. More often than not, I put in over my allocated hours. And when I made that agreement with my old team leader, my colleagues were happy with it. I'll send you the email now." While I'd been talking, I'd been searching through my emails for the original email outlining the agreement I'd made with my team leader. The email chain had actually started on the day of my interview with him emailing my 2 colleagues, explaining his proposed arrangement and seeking their okay. They had both said yes, and when I started working there 5 weeks later, he forwarded the email to me as confirmation that everything was cool. "I don't need to read this email, Austin. Whatever arrangement you had with your previous team leader ended when he left. This department now works to the company policy. You are to arrive on time. And to make sure that you do arrive on time, from now on, I want you to send me a screenshot of your desktop every morning when you start working at 10 a.m. with your computer's date and time visible. And I want you to send another email to me when you finish working at 6 p.m. every evening with your computer's date and time visible. But if my computer has had an update overnight, it can take 5 minutes to start up. What should I do then? Should I send you update logs? Then turn up 5 minutes early. I have another meeting to go to, so I need to leave now, but I expect the first email tonight. I will tell you when you can stop." He hung up before I could say okay or goodbye or anything. I logged into the call recording software and grabbed the ID of the call I just had. If I pulled the recording out of the server, it would have been logged. Instead, I had logged into the application server directly, searched for the recording, and copied it to a USB stick. I hadn't gotten around to installing antivirus onto this computer yet, so there was no data loss prevention systems in place. That's the kind of software companies install on computers to lock down USB drives and track what people copy to and from USB drives after their use has been approved. I went back to my desk, told the team what had happened, and they said that it sucked. We had a chat about what I was going to do, that I have to start arriving 20 or 30 minutes early every day to ensure that I'm logged in at 10 a.m. They offered to grab an old laptop and set up the desktop so it looks like my desktop so they could take a 10 a.m. screenshot if I did turn up late. I explained that it wasn't necessary. If I turned up late, I'd just explain why and involve HR. For the next week, I did as he asked. I would arrive anywhere from 15 to 40 minutes early and log into my computer. And then I'd go off and make coffee, hop downstairs, outside for a cigarette, just kill time until 10 a.m. arrived. Just before 10 a.m., I'd be back at my computer, take the screenshot, and send it to my boss. Then, at 6 p.m., I'd do the same. Probably a week and a few days later, the boss visited our office. I remember turning up about 25 minutes early that day. My boss made a smarmy comment about how I should be happy and proud that I'm being punctual. I just said, sure, checked my computer hadn't done an update overnight, offered to make coffee for the team, and then went off with 2 mugs. I came back with 3 mugs at about 10:45 a.m., and my boss commented on how long coffee takes to make here. We had a bean-to-cup machine. It would grind the beans for every cup. It was good coffee, but not particularly fast. Once I'd handed my cups to my colleagues, I grabbed my cigarettes from my bag and headed off outside. I came back around 10 or 12 minutes later, and my boss asked me where I'd been. I was enjoying my morning coffee with a cigarette. But there's work to be done. I don't start work until 10 a.m. Just because you start at 10 a.m., it doesn't mean you can't get started early. Sure, I could, but as I don't start until 10 a.m., I don't have to, unless you're approving me to do overtime. No, I'm not saying that, but if you're here, you may as well make yourself useful. If I remember correctly, we both acknowledged last week that I start work at 10 a.m. and finish work at 6 p.m. That isn't what was meant by our conversation, but that's how I interpreted it. I didn't wait for him to reply, just turned around and sat at my desk. It was 9:59 a.m. at this point, so I took a screenshot of my desktop, emailed it to him, and got to work. The routine continued through to the end of the week, and then partway through the following week. The boss had visited our office again on a day when I had arrived over 30 minutes early. We had had very heavy rain that day, so I had left extra early to avoid any detours due to flooding. I'd also dressed appropriately for the weather. Wellington boots, jeans with waterproof over-trousers, and a heavy wax jacket. On days like this, I'd normally come in through the fire escape. Well, it was actually a terrace, but facilities didn't want us using it for health and safety reasons, so it was only used as a fire escape. As it was sheltered, I could leave my wet weather clothes on the terrace to dry. There were 2 other pairs of wellies and heavy jackets out there already. Enter the building in my dry clothes, and then head to a bathroom to get changed into something a little smarter. As I walked past my boss, he looked shocked that I'd walked in jeans and a t-shirt. I pointed down at my shoeless feet and then outside at my wet weather clothes. He asked me if that was really necessary. They should do a reality TV show where they send city boys to live out in the countryside. That would be entertaining. A good 5 or so people in earshot laughed. He nervously laughed along with them. I went off and changed, came back, offered the team a coffee, left with 2 mugs, came back with 3, grabbed a cigarette, and went downstairs for a smoke. I was back at my desk with 5 minutes to spare. Logged in, waited until 9:59 a.m., took a screenshot, emailed it to him, and then logged into the phones and got to work. The rest of the day went on as usual. However, come 4 p.m., he had vanished. His laptop was still at his desk, but he was nowhere to be seen. Normally, he would leave around 4 p.m., the same time as my 2 teammates. At about 4:45 p.m., he finally emerges, looking visibly shaken. He tells me how today has been terrible and how one of the other offices has serious phone issues, and asks me if I've been getting calls from other offices. No, our phone group is only configured to take calls from this business unit. What? Calls are supposed to overflow to your lines if the other lines are all engaged. Not since I've been here, and that's a good 18 months now. I'm thinking to myself, oh crap, I just screwed myself and my team. I'm going to add you into the central phone group. We need as many people on the phones as possible. Okay, I'll see what I can do, but we don't have training on or access to any of the systems used by the other offices. Just provide support wherever you can. At about 4:50 p.m., I started getting calls from the other offices. Probably about 50% of them I can't do anything about. I tell the user I'll log a ticket and assign it to the relevant team. They would frequently ask me to transfer them, but I explain that their call came to me because all their lines are likely engaged. I'm sure I peed off a lot of users that day. I mean, some of the calls were about programs that I'd never even heard of. In one case, I picked up the phone to someone who I'd already answered the phone to and logged a ticket for. 5:45 p.m. comes along, and the frequency of calls hasn't ceased. Evenings are usually quite chill in this office. It's usually a good opportunity to work on requests and the unfinished admin work. But the phone was unrelenting. 5:50 p.m., it continues. 5:55 p.m., still going. I get off a call just in time for 6 p.m. and log out of the phone. I spent a few minutes going through the few things I still had open on my screen and was about to take a screenshot when my boss, still in the office at 6 p.m., asked me why I'd stopped taking calls. Well, I finish at 6 p.m. But we need people on the phones. The team at the office that has gone down is usually in until 8 p.m. We were already short 2 people on the phones with you helping out. In the old days, an evening like tonight would be one of those nights where I make up for the lost time from being late in the morning. But, as we agreed, I start at 10 a.m. and finish at 6 p.m. It's now 6:03 p.m., so I'm already past my finish time. Look, Austin, sometimes we need to put in a little extra for the company. For the department. We really need you tonight. Do I get paid overtime? No, I cannot authorize that. You can have time off in lieu. I'm happy to do flexible working and I'm happy to do overtime, but I don't do time off in lieu. Austin, I've been really pleased with your performance over the last 2 weeks. Impressed even. Please don't disappoint me tonight. I turned around, took a screenshot of my desktop, emailed it to him, and locked my computer. I want you to send me a screenshot of your desktop every morning when you start working at 10 a.m. with your computer's date and time visible. And I want you to send another email to me when you finish working at 6 p.m. every evening with your computer's date and time visible. Those were your exact words. How could I disappoint you? I've done exactly as you asked. I don't think that's exactly what I said. Yes, it is. I have a recording of the call. I have it transcribed. That is exactly what you said. But, okay, I'll stay until 7 p.m. Oh, thank you. But first, I want an email from you reaffirming the agreement that I made with my previous team leader with local HR CC'd in, and I want next Friday off, paid, no holiday allowance, making up for all the time I've wasted in the office arriving early so I can send you your 10 a.m. screenshot of my desktop. Or I can send the recording and transcript of our call 2 weeks ago to HR and the logs of you deleting the recording from our system to our data protection officer, unless you can show that you gained her approval before deleting the recording. Send me the email from your old team leader again, the one with the agreement. He replied, reaffirming the agreement, and I ended up working until nearly 7:30 p.m., as the forecast said the rain would be stopping then. I ended up leaving 2 months later. My rule is always 2 years. If I don't get a promotion, I leave. There was no chance I was getting a promotion after that episode with my boss, so I left 4 months short of my rule. I ended up getting a job at a city closer to me, for more pay, no answering of phones, and with fewer C roads on the commute, which made the journey a lot more consistent. And when they asked why I'd only worked for my last employer 20 months, the commute was too unpredictable. Standing ovation for UOP. That was just, chef's kiss, beautiful. You just had everything that you did right. You got him in his place, used what he said against him, all done by the books. OP, you are the MVP of today, or even the rest of the year at this point. Way to go, dude. Be sure to comment the secret phrase below. Gotcha, boss. And check out another video here. I'm Austin. Thanks for watching.